Alrighty guys, welcome back to part 2 of the Intro to 3D Printing series. The topic of today's video is going to be the basics of putting your 3D printer together, along with what makes up a 3D printer in general. So this is going to be a great informative video for you guys just getting into 3D printing. If you haven't seen my last video on choosing a 3D printer, I encourage you to check that one out as well. So thanks guys, stay tuned. Alrighty, so the printer in question today is a printer I recommended in my last video, the Creality CR10 Mini. Now, as you can see, I have some filament lined up here, but I'll be removing that in a second. So let's go over the basic anatomy of a 3D printer. Now, I like to start from the left to the right. So we have our display here. This is where you control the printer from with this scroll wheel that clicks as well. And that's just your basic interface, and I'll be going over that as well. So now we move on to here, the SD card. This is where you put your prints on and just plug it right in here. And that's how you are able to load prints onto the printer. Now, we're moving on to the meat of the printer. Starting from the bottom, we have our linear rails. These are aluminum extrusions. And then we have this middle part. Now, this middle part is called the Y-axis. And this goes forward and backwards. And if you think of it back from, in high school and college, if you took math or something, you know that there is a graph. You have your X is the horizontal plane and the Y is the vertical plane. Now, as you can see, when you're looking at it from down, this is your Y, right? Forwards and backwards. And then this rail right here is your X axis. And this goes left to right. So that's what makes up that part of the 3D printer. And this piece right here is your hot end assembly. If you take this fan shroud off, you can see that there is a heat break and a heat brick, and that's what basically heats up your printer so it can print with the filament. And this is just a fan shroud that keeps the heat break cool, and this is the fan shroud that blows onto your print as it's printing and cools the layers fast. Now, if we look over here, we have our extruder assembly. This is where you insert the filament to be printed. And I'll be going over the process of getting into your first print in the next video. This is just the basic anatomy of the 3D printer. So now, if we look over here, that's our spool, and it's just fed into this little gear here that you squeeze, and this is an attachment just to make inserting filament a little bit easier. Now, if we go make our way back to the build plate, we can see that there are two knobs here. There are two knobs in the front and two knobs in the back. This is how we level the bed, and this I'll be going over in more depth in the next video. Alrighty, so unfortunately I do not have a disassembled printer with me right now, but I can just go over the basic process of assembling your CR10 Mini when you receive it. So basically it comes in three main parts. You have your user interface over here. You have the bottom part of the printer, which consists of these rails, the Y-axis, and the build plate. And then you have the top part, which is the Z-axis, and that's just going up and down with the printer. So if I turn the screw in the back here, it goes up, and that's the Z-axis. So basically there are 4 screws right here, and that is the first step, is attaching the Z-axis to the X and Y-axis. And you basically put those 4 screws in, and you basically have, the gist of the printer. Now, after that, you need to be, very cautious about this. You have to hook up all your wires. And it may seem a little painstaking at first, but you have to know your axes. So there are, you know, different wires controlling all the different stepper motors and your switches here to know that your x-axis and z-axis are home. So you just have some wires, and all the cables are labeled with Z, X, Y, and E. And also, when you first get your printer, there is a little power item here, and it usually is set on 230 volts. And if you're in America, you need to switch it to 115 volts. That's just, you know, European and North American standard. So basically, you have to switch that, or else your printer won't turn on. All right, guys, so I hope you learned a little bit about the anatomy of a 3D printer before you go ahead and put it together. Sorry I didn't have a disassembled printer, but we'll be going over in the next video about the slicer and how it works. I'll be going in in-depth detail of pretty much every setting that you'll need to get started to eventually get to your first print. Now, that video will probably be a little bit longer than the past two, but I think you guys will really enjoy them. I know there's a lot of other in-depth tour breakdowns, but I just figured I'd throw one on my channel for you guys as well. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's video and learned something. Feel free to check out all my other social media links in the description below. And if you were wondering something that I did not mention in this video, ask me in the comments below and I will get back to it. Any questions, I will answer them in the comments. So thanks guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.